The family aren't really about communication. They're actually about strategy. One of the big mistakes that you can make is thinking that conflict is the issue. And actually, conflict isn't the issue. It's structure that's the issue. Because it's okay to have conflict. It's out of conflict. Often great ideas come, positives can rise. But they've got to feel safe knowing that you can have that discussion, you can have that conflict, and it's not going to turn into we don't talk to each other for a week.
If you want more time, money, freedom, and have a business that's not reliant on you, then you're in the right place. Each week, Mark Creedon, along with some of the very best business minds in the world, will take you through simple, practical steps you can take to create the business you always wanted. From his own practical experience, Mark will show you how to work less, make more, and get the business you always wanted, the one that you deserve. Now here's your host, one of Australia's most sought-after business coaches, Mark Creedon.
Welcome to the latest edition of the Family and Business Podcast. I'm Mark Creedon. I'm flying solo today because Caroline's off doing what lots of people should do and growing her own knowledge. Hey, in this episode, we're going to talk about family disputes and why arguments that come from the business and go into the family aren't really about communication. They're actually about strategy, and that's what we're going to get underway with right now with some tools that you can actually use to improve your communication skills and your strategy skills. Because most business owners who are in a family relationship of some sort, husband and wife, father and daughter, whatever it might be, brother and sister, they don't really struggle with strategy. They struggle with the way they talk about strategy. And so what we find is that often a conversation around the strategy in the business becomes quite a personal conversation. And so you might be in a situation where you'll say, I think that you should be doing something else, and the other person will take it personally. Or if you are in a position where your decision has to be the decision that's run, how do you work that out when you're in a relationship with your business partner? So if I want to really, I'll give you a real example. So a couple of weeks ago, my son Nick, who's behind the camera right now, Nick works in the business with us, and we were having a conversation about something, and sort of Nick wasn't really, not necessarily not agreeing with me, but I felt that he wasn't really listening. And so how do I have that conversation without us as father and son ending up in a blue and not talking to each other for 2 weeks? So, and I think the best way to do that is to understand that you've got to define your role. So, Nick, you remember that we had that little chat a couple of weeks back, and you were frustrated, I was frustrated, and I think in the end all I had to do is say, okay, so Nick, I want to make it clear, I'm not talking to you as your dad now. I'm now talking to you in this business role. Do you think that kind of clarified things a bit for us?
Yeah, I think you have to sort of make that distinction. I think that, it's hard. It's a fine line, and sometimes you can get caught up in it, so it's really important to make that clear when you're having that conversation.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's important. So really, for me, that's about structure. See, I think the thing about how do you have these sorts of relationship conversations, or these sorts of business conversations within a relationship? And again, let's use an example. So I've had conversations with Caroline about how we invest in growth. And so my view is, how do we invest in growth? Her view is, how do we protect cash? And so you could end up in the situation where I'm sort of saying, oh, man, you're just too conservative, you won't grow. And she could say, yeah, but you're too risky, you're taking too many risks. And now we're not discussing the business, we're actually defending our position. So suddenly the whole conversation's gone away from talking about the business strategy, and now you're defending your position. And if you're not careful, all of a sudden it's going to start to come into, oh, you remember that time where you took that risk and it didn't work, and it might not, you bought that car, or might not even be about the business. So the really important thing I think here is to maintain some structure. The way I look at it is same person, different hat. So what I said to Nick is, hey, Nick, I'm not talking to you as your dad, mate. I'm talking to you as the CEO of this business, and this is what I need, please. And I actually saw in him a kind of a shift. It was like, okay, fair enough. My role in this is to accept that. If it was about something to do with content, particularly video, my role would be to accept what Nick would be saying, and Nick might say something to me along those lines.
Yeah, it goes both ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
And you've got to be able to make that separation to have a conversation that without those extra emotions attached.
Yep.
And at the same time, like, it is something that is hard, and that, probably requires a bit of patience and a little bit of understanding, putting yourself in the other person's shoes a lot as well.
Yeah, really good point. And so, for example, if it had been around video, you could have said to me, well, okay, I'm not talking to you as your son now. I'm now talking to you as a video director. Like, dude, like, I know what I'm talking about. You need to listen to this. And Nick, you'll find this quite funny. So Caroline's not here today, but of course she has given me notes. She's put together notes, as every good business partner would, right? So here are Caroline's 3 steps. She thinks that there's 3 things that you could do. And I agree, by the way, to actually help you through this. So the first one is to separate the hat. So it's what she said, same person, different hat, right? I'm not talking as your dad, I'm not talking as your husband or as your brother or your sister. Now we're talking about business. And we've seen that work really, really well when we've worked with clients who are in that relationship where they've gone, I'm not talking as your husband or your wife now, I'm now talking as your business partner that has this expertise in this area or has this level of responsibility. And so that same person, different hat. So number 1, separate the hats. Number 2, define the decision rights. And I think that if we were to draw this as a triangle or a funnel, it makes sense. So the first thing is to work out what hat you're wearing, and then to define what are the decision rights that fit around that hat. So if we use the conversation with Nick, decisions around how we shoot a video, what it looks like, those sort of content decisions, I'd be crazy to get involved in that. I'd be crazy to use my position or my authority or whatever it might be to overrule that, because I don't know that. I mean, Nick's a member of the Australian Institute of Directors, so like he knows that shit, and I don't. So understand the hats, but then really define those kind of decision rights. And then I think the third thing is to anchor it to something. And this is a really good point that Caroline's made here. It's about anchoring it to something. And in other words, hey, I know that we're having this conversation now, and I know you feel really strongly about that, but here's what I'm trying to achieve. I'm trying to achieve this 30-day plan. I'm trying to achieve these 12-month goals. I'm trying to achieve this. And I think that if you can anchor the conversation back to something really solid that you both are aiming for, then you're far more likely to be able to move away from that level of conflict. And if you think about it practically, if you've got a difference of opinion on things, number 1, let's define, we're in the right hats. Number 2, define the decision roles that move around that hat. But number 3, I really love this idea of anchoring it to something, because that's where we get that common ground. That's where we agree to things. That's where we can go, well, you know what, might disagree on this or disagree on that, but the reality is we are all in agreement that by the end of this year, we want to achieve whatever it might be. And I think the other thing too is that you've got to pre-plan this. I ran a webinar. I was a guest on a webinar with Michael Yardney the other day, and we're talking about what are the things that you could focus on right now in your business. And I was talking a lot about focusing on culture and what culture means and how to really grow business. And I was using Alan Mulally as an example, who was the CEO of the Ford Motor Company, and he took the company from a $17 billion loss to a $6 billion profit. And how did he do it? Not by focusing initially on quality of product, on efficiency of plants, of budget cuts, of anything like that. He focused entirely on culture. And he turned the business around based on culture, because what happened was, once he started working on that, the people in the business started taking responsibility for all those other things I just mentioned. And it's a long story, but I'm getting to a point here. One of the things I said in the webinar was that right now, if I walked out of my office and said to my team here, guys, I'm really struggling, I can absolutely guarantee you that the team would circle the wagons around me. But the point is, I've done the work for that. So I haven't been an ass and then suddenly going, I'm struggling. I've worked really hard on the culture in the business, and I've worked really hard on developing a team around me that believe in what we're doing and support us, and supporting them and knowing that I'm genuinely interested in them. So if I walked out and said I'm struggling, they'd circle the wagons around me. What's the relevance of that? If you want to be able to move past these sort of conflict conversations, you actually need to do the groundwork first. You need to do the groundwork first. So in other words, you actually need to have some time not where you're in conflict, understanding and setting these ground rules. Who owns what decision? Who's wearing what hat? What are the ground rules around those decisions? How will we handle disagreement? So those 3 points, those 3 factors that Caroline gave me in these notes, I think are really valid, and they're a really simple way for you to be able to navigate this kind of situation where you got, a decision at work that turns into a conflict in the relationship. But it's only going to be super successful and continually successful if you've put the groundwork in beforehand. Like, it's no good in the middle of that argument going, well, hang on a second, we need to work out what it is that we really want out of this, and we need to work out whose responsibility this really is. And so you've got to put that groundwork in first. And I think that one of the big mistakes that you can make is thinking that conflict is the issue. And actually, conflict isn't the issue, it's structure that's the issue. Because it's okay to have conflict. It's out of conflict, often great ideas come, positives can rise, but they've got to feel safe knowing that you can have that discussion, you can have that conflict, and it's not going to turn into we don't talk to each other for a week. So when I had the conversation with Nick the other day, and I just went, I'm not talking to you as your dad, I'm now talking to you as the CEO, this is what needs to happen. And he just went, yep, okay, fair point, I'll take that on the chin, let's just make it happen. And we just got on with it. So, we didn't end up having, blue and not talking to each other for days, or worse still, if you're in the business with, full time with somebody, it permeates through the office, right? Or your work environment, your shop, your warehouse, whatever it might be. Your teams start to go, oh, there's conflict. And when there's conflict and there's no way of resolving it, I think it makes people feel really unsettled and really uncertain. And in lots of ways, as an employer, it's kind of your job. Like, I always look at the team that we've got as our kids in a way, and I think that as a leader, it's your job to show them a way of managing conflict. It's okay to have an argument. It's okay to have a disagreement, but you've got to have a way to resolve it. And I think that's the big answer out of all of this. So here's what we talked about. We talked about the concept of what do you do if you've got a disagreement around business that you feel is starting to trickle into create a disagreement around your personal relationship. Caroline's 3-step process. Number 1, be really clear around what hat you're wearing. So I'm not wearing the husband hat, I'm wearing the director hat, or I'm wearing the director of sales hat, or I'm wearing the ops manager hat, or whatever it might be. Number 2, have a really clear definition around what are the decisions that come with that hat. Right, so you can't say I'm wearing the ops manager hat and then tell your wife or your partner who's in charge of sales how to deal with sales. That's not how it works. Then number 3 is to anchor it to and always maintain a big picture here. What are we really looking to achieve? What's our 12-month goal? What's our exit strategy? What do we want to achieve for the business? What's the big picture plan? And then the 4th thing, that wasn't in Caroline's notes, but the 4th thing, if she was here, I know she'd agree with it, is that you've got to set all of this up beforehand. You've got to pre-frame it. You've got to put the work in ahead. Do that, get that right, and you will find that those work discussions won't turn into family or relationship arguments. I'm Mark Creedon. This has been the Family and Business Podcast, where every week we help you to find a way to scale your business without damaging your relationship. Until we chat in the next episode, please make sure you spend time with those who matter most.